Hello again, everyone. I'm Father Joe Nazzle from Sonino Mission House in Berkeley. I'm recording this on the Feast of St. Joseph, March 19th. And today in St. Joseph, Missouri, the family, friends, community members, and parishioners of St. Francis Xavier Church will be gathering to remember their pastor, Father Joe Miller, who died on Tuesday. In the Catholic tradition, St. Joseph has many titles: St. Joseph the Worker, St. Joseph, Husband of Mary, St. Joseph, Guardian of Jesus, Patron and Protector of the Universal Church. But for the last year, one title the Church has given St. Joseph seems most important: St. Joseph, Patron of the Dying. With more than 500,000 people in the United States and more than 2 million people around the world dying of the coronavirus, St. Joseph has been working overtime. I can't help but believe on Tuesday evening, March 16th, the patron saint was there to welcome his namesake, Joe Miller, into the communion of saints. Though Joe was only 5 years older than me, I enjoyed telling people that he taught me in high school. I was a senior at Precious Blood Seminary when Joe was in special formation and teaching at the seminary. He had just graduated from St. Joseph's College, but he looked like he was a freshman. For years, Joe kept that youthful appearance, and I wonder if it had something to do with his optimism about life and his joy in being a priest. Joe and I were never stationed together, but I teased him about how he stole my first assignment. I served as a deacon at St. Francis Xavier in St. Joe and was hoping to return there as my first assignment as a priest. Instead, I went to Centerville, Iowa, and Joe went to St. Joe. He was always very competitive, especially when it came to sports. You know, when we were younger, before our knees started aching and the weight of the years began to accumulate around our waists, he was very good on the courts. He knew his way around the courts, whether it was driving the lane in basketball or coming to the net in tennis. Whenever you'd see Joe, he'd greet you with, "How you doing?" And when you asked how he was doing, his mantra was, "God is good." Joe was a gentle and kind man, but he was also very firm in his convictions and his way of seeing and doing things. Someone once sent me a prayer card that said the name Joseph means increasing faith. I don't know if it captures all of us who are named Joseph, but it certainly reflects the life of Joe Miller. I like to think that at some point in the next few weeks, as those who loved him gather to tell the stories about Joe and what he meant to them as a brother, as an uncle, as a missionary of the precious blood, as a friend and as a priest, a rainbow might crease the sky to remind us of the hope that Joe lived. Rainbows were Joe's favorite symbol, and they remind us not of the pot of gold at the other end, but of the hope that guides our journey in faith, an ever-increasing journey of faith, just like St. Joseph. You know, Pope Francis has declared 2021 as the year of St. Joseph. It was on the Feast of St. Joseph, March 19, 2013, that Francis was installed as Pope. He said that day we must not be afraid of goodness or even tenderness. He wanted all those in attendance, which included many of the world's leaders, in his words, to serve the poorest, the weakest, the least important. Our compassion and care must extend to those who suffer the most. Mercy has been a consistent theme these past 8 years of Francis' papacy, which is why the negative pronouncement regarding the blessing of same-sex unions on Monday was so disappointing to so many. From his famous quote, "Who am I to judge?" early in his papacy when he was asked about gay priests, to his support of civil protection for same-sex couples last fall, Pope Francis has reflected an inclusivity that instilled hope in so many people, and especially in the LGBTQ community, who often felt rejected by the Church. To paraphrase Father Timothy Radcliffe, the former Superior General of the Dominicans, who said when he was asked back in 2005 what he thought of the Vatican document banning men with homosexual orientation in the priesthood, he said, "I wish the Church would be more concerned about whom seminarians hated than who they loved. I would hope the Church would focus more on how we are to love and honor and bless each person as a child of God, rather than denying God's grace and blessing to anyone." On a retreat a few years ago, after Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" a mother whose son is gay came to me during the retreat. She said her son had been away from the church for many years because of some of the pronouncements from the Vatican. And she said that when Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" her son felt hope for the first time in years and began going back to the sacraments. I fear many of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters will hear the pronouncement from last Monday and lose all hope and be lost to the church forever, which is why the readings for this fifth Sunday of Lent are so important, because they remind us of the covenant of love that is etched not on stone, but on the heart. The message of Jesus is not so much about following the rules, but following Jesus, who was about nurturing relationships, summed up by the prophet Jeremiah, "I will be their God, and they will be my people." In this unique and unconditional relationship captured in the language of covenant, the prophet portrays a God who is all-powerful, but yet very personal, infinite, yet intimate. And what this means is that God knows us by heart. When we know someone by heart, we know the other on a deeper level because we spent time with the other, tracing each one's story. We've created a safe space for each one to take risks in speaking from the depths of one's truth. We're willing to sacrifice our own needs and wants for the sake of the other. We don't hide behind our fears or insecurities, and we're not afraid to name and claim our weakness, and we don't pretend or put on masks. Knowing another by heart and being known by heart is the greatest of gifts because our lives are awakened and our senses are stirred. You know, it's like the writer I heard interviewed who wrote a book about her deceased mother. And as a little girl, she remembers the perfume her mother wore. And she had not smelled that fragrance in years, but she was in Paris at a department store and she smelled the fragrance and was overwhelmed by the memories and the spirit of her mom. We can follow the rules, of course, but our call is to follow Jesus. And Jesus was the embodiment of God's mercy and compassion, which is born in his own sense of vulnerability. We sense this vulnerability in the gospel when Jesus says he's troubled because he knows his hour is near. He's just told his followers that he must be like the grain of wheat that falls to the earth and dies to produce the fruit of forgiveness and salvation. Jesus uses that image of being lifted up from the earth so that he might draw all people, everyone, to himself. That's the image of the cross, which seeks to draw all people to the very heart of God. Trusting that we are known by heart, by God, will help us get through every crisis of faith. I still believe Pope Francis kindled that revolution of the heart of tenderness when he became Pope 8 years ago. And I know Father Joe Miller, a kind and gentle soul, often exuded this hope and compassion, this warmth and welcome to everyone. Rest in peace, Joe. Welcome home. May God bless you and your families this week. Stay safe and take good care.